Today, we're talking with actor Yelena Shmulenson, right here on No Rest for the Weekend. Hello and welcome to No Rest for the Weekend, the show where we go behind the scenes and talk to the creators of independent film and series. I'm your host, Victoria Oliver. Now, you may know Yelena Shmulenson from shows like Chicago Med, Blue Bloods, or Boardwalk Empire, or films like A Serious Man. But she can recently be seen as Rhea Boyle on Netflix's Orange is the New Black. Our producer, Jason Godbey, had a chance to catch up with Yelena in the studio.
Hi, it's Jason for No Rest for the Weekend, and today with me in the Rabbit Hole studio is Miss Yelena Shmulenson.
Hello.
Welcome, Yelena. How are you?
I am good. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you for coming. We always appreciate when people make the schlep to Brooklyn.
We schlep, we match. It's a good day.
This was not pre.
This was not pre. There was no memo.
For those of you just listening to the podcast, we didn't plan on both wearing blue shirt, but it is Blue Shirt Day. So it's also 72 degrees out, oddly. I wanted to start right off getting into your origin story, how things started for you. Tell us about kind of how you discovered acting and like what was the moment that you decided I want to do this for a living?
I don't think I ever decided that, actually. I am originally from Russia, and I was never really acting there, but I memorized a lot of poems, and I had a really good memory. So whenever there was any kind of play or something, I was always in it. But just because, I don't think because of talent, because I wasn't afraid of anything and because I wasn't afraid to memorize lines. And then I was an exchange student while I was still in Ukraine in Salem, Oregon, which is at what was basically a summer camp for the arts. And we did West Side Story in Oklahoma, and it was my first time sort of being face to face with the American musical, which I had no idea existed. And I went back to Ukraine, and then a year later, my family immigrated to the US, and I had to go to college. And I had no idea what I wanted, and I went through the college guide, which was, 800 pages. And the only thing that I could come up with that I would want to be doing was this musical theater thing. And I had a monologue, and I had a song, and I completely accidentally got a backstage, which was the fall college guide. And I went through it, called them. I didn't even know the difference between graduate and undergraduate. I just called whatever. One school I said, send me a graduate catalog, and one school I said, send me the undergraduate catalog. And started auditioning and got accepted to a bunch of schools and got accepted on a scholarship to Marymount Manhattan College that didn't have a musical theater major, but they had a theater major, a musical theater minor. And because I didn't have to pay anything, I'm pretty sure I was the only person from Russia at the school at the time. And that is sort of how it happened.
And then you get out of college and you decide to start auditioning, start doing theater right out of there?
I don't think I decided. I just kind of started auditioning, and I remember
this is what you do kind of thing?
Well, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. This is, there is no concept, at least then, there wasn't any a concept in Russia that you go to college for one thing and then you go do something else. I still lived at home, and I thought, well, I went to college for 4 years. I should be doing something with it. And I auditioned, and I got into 3 things at the same time. I was doing Brigadoon for the Village Light Opera Group. I was doing Flowers for Algernon at some little theater around Port Authority that is now, I don't know what it is, a massage parlor, a tattoo parlor. I don't know what that place is now. And there was a production of Edward Albee's Lolita that I was involved with, and all of that was happening at the same time. None of it was paid, and I had a great time.
And then when you started working professionally, what was like the first big film job or first big television job?
The first big film job, I auditioned for Robert De Niro's The Good Shepherd, and which is a movie sort of kind of minor. I don't think anybody saw it, but it's Matt Damon, Angelina Jolie, the early history of the CIA. And I auditioned for it, and then I auditioned for it again, and I got it. And we shot it in D.C. at across the street from the Washington Monument. And I was on the bus with Matt Damon, and Robert De Niro was directing, and he was just an old, tired grandpa, because it was like 5 in the morning or 6 in the morning, and he was in the front of the bus and I was in the back of the bus, and I couldn't hear what he was saying because I just see his lips moving, and he was just going to be like, I was like, I don't know what you're saying. But there was an assistant in between who would
who's translating.
Who was translating. And the bus was really, really smoky, and I had a 7-year-old boy who at some point decided that he didn't want to do this anymore. He was just getting tired of the doing his thing and getting on and off the bus, and he wouldn't give me his hand, he wouldn't get off the bus with me. And Robert De Niro kind of gets down on his knees, and cause the kid's tiny, and goes, Jack, just do it for me, buddy. Could you do this for me? And the kid's like, I don't know. And that was like an amazing day. That was an amazing day.
Cinema's greatest artist begging a 7-year-old to get off the bus.
Well, because he had to talk to Matt Damon.
Right.
And then,
I wouldn't want to do that when I was 7 years old. That's awfully intimidating.
Well, he didn't know who Matt Damon was. All he knew was Matt Damon was from Boston, and the kid was from New York, and he hated the Red Sox. And he said, when I see Matt Damon, I'm going to tell him I hate the Red Sox. And then Matt Damon gets on the...
you got a future for you, kid.
Yeah, he gets on the set, and I say, Jack, this is Matt Damon. He goes, this is Matt Damon? He goes, yeah. He goes, I hate the Red Sox suck. Matt Damon, oh yeah, buddy? What do you like? And it just...
It's always good to get things on the right foot, when you start right off the bat.
Yeah. Hi, I hate you.
So after that, I remember you and your husband Alan Lewis Rickman, who I also had sitting in this chair with me. Your husband, he's a delightful, quiet, reserved man.
Yes, that one.
He came on. He was terrific. But you guys did a film together. With the Coen brothers, you did A Serious Man, where you're in this sort of prologue. It's a little bizarre,
yes,
because the whole movie is in the 1960s in Minnesota. It's a good movie, but there's this part with you and Alan and Five-ish Finkel, of all people, which it sounds like the beginning of a joke. It's like
three Jews in an old house.
Me and my husband and Five-ish Finkel walk into a bar. But so you're in this prologue together. What was that experience like? I'm assuming it was your first time working with the Coens.
Yes, it was the first time working with the Coens. We auditioned separately. They actually hadn't seen us together before they cast us. It was interesting. We were in Minnesota in a huge kind of soundstage hangar kind of thing. And it was, you meet the Coen brothers and you kind of go, hello. And everything inside you is just going, I'm talking to the Coen brothers. I'm talking to the Coen brothers. And then after a while, after 4 hours, you're like, yeah, Joel, Ethan, because you're colleagues now. You're not that sort of, you're a big man and I am a small fry. And
were they welcoming like that? Were they cool?
They're just really... chill is the only word I can come up with. And they're just very calm. The set is very calm. There was something that wasn't working, and I think at the end of the second day, because we were only supposed to shoot for 2 days, and I think one of them used a curse word, and quietly, and everybody else just kind of there was a hush, what? They're angry, let's fix this thing. But it was just very workmanlike, This is the camera, this is the setup.
Because they had already made a bunch of movies before then. I mean,
yes.
These guys, I think they make about a film a year every 2 years.
And they also write some that they don't direct.
Yeah, and I know they've got a closet full of scripts.
And a closet full of scripts.
They just, I met Joel Coen years ago. Right after the Hudsucker Proxy, and seemed like a very cool guy.
They are. They're very we run into them sometimes because sometimes they go to see movies at Film Forum, and we run into them, and they're just,
Was there anything that
completely
they,
regular.
in terms of the way they worked or the way they worked with you, that because it must be a little bit weird if you used to being directed by one person to now have this kind of tag team type of thing?
Well, most of the time, I mean, Joel's the one who talked to you most of the time. He's the one who said, this is the camera, this is where you are, this is the setup, this is what we're doing, this is where the camera's moving, this is the piece of script that we're shooting right now. When something was, and they're both watching on the monitor and they sort of confer, and then Joel will come back to you and say, okay, now we're doing this. Ethan sort of came on when something wasn't working. When they wanted you to try something new, most of the time, Ethan would come in and say, can you maybe try it this way?
Mm-hmm.
And that was sort of how the division of labor, at least on the set that we were in.
And how long did that whole process take to film that scene? Because it's not a terribly long
It was
bit.
it was 8 pages.
Mm-hmm. It's
I
like
think
a short film, basically.
Yeah, it's about 8 minutes of screen time, 8.5. It was supposed to take 2 days, and we had some technical issues with ice picks that weren't quite sticking the way they were supposed to, and ended up being 3 full days of
Wow.
filming.
Oh, so that's a pretty good experience. I mean, I think it's harder if you're not the person, if you're not the star, or if you're not the person that's on the show for the length of the show.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's harder to be like a 2-day actor or a 1-day
It's
actor.
much harder. Yeah, absolutely. But it was just us. It was
Right.
the 3 of us and the Coen brothers and the crew. Because they've shot everything else already, and there was no running anywhere else. It was like, this was the 3 days that they shot this scene.
So this was all coming at the end of the shoot.
Right. The only thing they had to film after us was the bar mitzvah.
Okay, so that
I kept saying, maybe, Dora, my character, could like haunt the bar mitzvah, like fly around like from a Sarah.
I was hoping
They
for
were
a
not
sequel.
going for it.
I was hoping for a sequel in the shtetl.
There was a Facebook thread going
called
which is very
"Revisiting
funny.
the Shtetl."
There was we all got Facebook just happened, I think, and we were all of the actors whom we only met at the premiere. We all became friends, and somebody said, "Oh, what about the sequel?" And every person was like, "Okay, the sequel is about my character who did this, this, and this." And I remember writing, "Oh yeah, the sequel is about Dora and Velvel opening a store or something and failing and like moving to America and opening a store or something like that."
They immigrate and open a dry goods store in Cincinnati.
And killing Dybbuk's on the side. I don't.
So fast forwarding into the present, you've also, I mean, you guys do. I know you guys do a lot of theater, and you've done a lot of Yiddish theater, which is something people don't know a lot about. You recently got on like one of the hippest shows around, which is Orange is the New Black, which the television experience as opposed to the movie experience has got to be a different way of working, I imagine, for the actor. I know it is very different for directors.
Yes, and I sort of, because I'd been on television before. I've done, I think I did Life on Mars, which was my first television job, which was on ABC, and I was not prepared. I remember how quickly everything went, and
as opposed to film.
But Orange was kind of, I was expecting 3 takes and we're done, and Orange, they took their time. It was
Is that because it's dialogue heavy and a lot of acting going on?
I don't
and
know. I think because it's also every episode is directed by a different person, so they all have their different styles of working. Some people work faster than the others.
So you've done like 8 different episodes. You had 8 different directors?
I had, I think, about 5, because some of them come back.
That's interesting because you're playing the same character.
Yes.
I think you can do that in television because, as I talked about it with Richard LeMay, who's a director, he's done TV and film, and he's like, what we spoke about was when you were the director on a television set, the actors and so forth, they play those parts and they know them so well that they kind of know what they would do and what they wouldn't.
Right. Especially if you're, a regular. I'm not going to say it was hard for me, but it was sort of tough to remember because I'm recurring. So I was, my first episode at the very end of season 3, and then I came in at, I think, episode 5 in season 4, and I didn't know this was going to be recurring because, you hope for this, but everybody hopes for this, but sometimes it doesn't happen, and I really was not expecting it.
Was there a lot more to it when you, so you do your first day and you're like, okay, great, I'm on the show, I'm on an episode, and then they call you back. Is there any oh God, what are they going to do with me? What's the next thing that's going to happen to my character? Because you play, tell me who you play on the show.
I play inmate Boyle, who is Jewish. So my first thing is I help, sorry, spoilers, I help Black Cindy convert to Judaism. And that's sort of my first thing. And then none of my subsequent episode have anything to do with Jewishness. I just happened to be there talking. So they really didn't follow that, which I'm very happy with because I play a lot of Jewish characters and a lot of immigrant characters. And
which you're very good at, by the way. I mean, if there's Alan, when he was here, I asked him about advice, and he said, know what your superpower is and do that and market yourself as that.
Yeah.
And you've got immigrant woman down.
Oh my God. Absolutely. But the thing is that you kind of get tired of it. And then after a while, you're like, I speak English, let me say something that doesn't have an accent.
Because you were in Boardwalk Empire.
I'm in Boardwalk Empire.
And you didn't speak a word of English
I only
in that.
speak Yiddish. I am in The Serious Man. I only speak Yiddish. In Life on Mars, I only spoke Russian.
Oh my God.
And it's got to the point where people are like, oh, do you have a reel? I was like, yes, but it's all in different languages. Like, how is it going to help me sell myself if I don't speak any English? And what I was so happy about with...
You should have you need a T-shirt that says, kiss me, I speak English or something.
No, I actually have... I'm working on a one-woman show one day. It's going to happen. I think it's going to be called Professional Immigrant.
Oh,
because
nice.
that is my superpower, which I would like to acquire some new ones, I think, at this point.
I mean, every actor, it's like, well, okay, it's work. It's great to work. And then when you have worked, you're like, well, what do I want to do next kind of thing?
Right, because when you start out, you're sort of at the mercy of others, people who write, people who direct, and I'm not a writer. I'm a actress who sings, so I'm not necessarily, I do not generate my own material like my husband does all the time. Fountain of ideas and things and jokes and things. So, but I, wait until somebody calls me, until I have a text, until I have a play, until I have a script. And after a while, you realize, as you get experience and as you learn more about the craft and the business and the industry and you watch movies and you read plays, that I kind of want to be in charge a little bit of my own career, of my own development and where I'm going. And it's very hard to do that unless you really generate your own material.
Talk to me a little bit about that, because one of the purposes of this show is for people who either are trying to break into the business or try to, get to the next level in their career. And one of the things I talk about with people is, if you're a director, chances are you're not going to be Steven Spielberg. Like, you're not going to be...
In the beginning.
you're not going to start out directing huge blockbusters, one right after the other. You're going to direct commercials. You're going to do TV. You're going to direct, B-roll for the History Channel or something. If you get a real job and you don't have to make your own material. For you, in terms of, and we talked about this the first time I interviewed you, like, describe a little bit sort of the hustle that you have to go through when you're an actor and what it takes to be a working actor.
It's a grind. I don't know. You wake up, you have tea, you go through the casting notice. Before, you used to look at the backstage. Now you go to Actors Access, you go through the Actors Equity. If you're auditioning for theater, you look at stuff, you make submissions. Then you do research, who's directing what movie, what is shooting in New York, what kind of series are shooting in New York. The Marvelous Mrs. Maisels, which was shooting in New York, and everybody was on it, and everybody auditioned for it, and it's sort of, there's a buzz where, there's something exciting in New York, and there are, I think, like 35 shows that shot in New York last year, and so there's a lot of research to be done. Who's directing, which studio, how do I get in touch with this person? Who is the director or the showrunner? Have I seen anything they've done? Can I write them a fan letter? Can I write them, a Twitter thing that, mentions them somehow? Can I develop some kind of relationship with them that way? So then when my agent submits me or I submit myself, they already sort of know who I am.
And that's a good point to make, is that you're doing all of this stuff, but you still have an agent who's submitting you.
Right.
You still have somebody you're working through. But even with that, because a lot of people, I think that there's sort of like this illusion of like, once I get an agent.
Yeah. Once you get an agent, you kind of, for a second there, you kind of sit back and relax and kind of say they're going to do all the work. But there are a lot of projects that you know yourself and you think you're right for that, and your agent submitted someone else or missed it, or they're out of town, or they just don't think you're right for it. And sometimes you need to push. And also sometimes, like my agent, who's great, I, get first dibs on all of the immigrant stuff. And I'm not done with it. I still speak, Russian and Yiddish and Ukrainian. So that's not going to go away, but I kind of want to go a different way. So I have to convince her that, please submit me for this because this is right. I am right for this.
There's definitely a danger of getting pigeonholed.
Yeah. Well, it's a, what is it? It's a double-edged sword, right? You want to be pigeonholed because you want to know what your superpower is.
Right.
I want to be the person they call when they need a Russian actor. And last year I think I did two guest stars back to back. I was a Russian waitress on Blue Bloods, and I was a French interrogation agent who speaks Russian on Madam Secretary. It was lovely, but there's more to me than, a spy or a Russian waitress.
Right. I was waiting to see you on The Americans one day.
So was I. I've auditioned a bunch of times for that.
Because I don't know if there are any actual Russian people on that show.
There are. I think at this point a lot of my friends have been on that show.
I think I even texted you. I was watching that show and I was like, Yelena, you have to get on the show. Like it's 1980s and they want Russians.
I auditioned a bunch of times and very friendly with the casting director, and it just was like, I kind of want to keep you for something because you speak English without an accent, and in Russian I kind of want to find something, and I don't know, it just never happened.
This is all good stuff, by the way, because I think people need a realistic depiction of this. I don't think people.
Well, I think we all have, Hollywood, whatever. We all have this idea that we're just going to get discovered one day, that we're just going to, sit at the counter at a diner and somebody's going to say, you know what, you look so pretty, here's my card, I want to make you a star, which is, every Hollywood movie from
if you're Johnny Depp or Lana Turner, that happens
Lana Turner in a sweater, then it's fine. Or really, really gorgeous.
Yeah.
But so there are two things I want to say. So number one, this is a lot of work, and number two, what was I going to say? There are a lot of good people out there. I recently took a class with a casting director, and everybody had to get up and do a monologue. It was a theater class. And I realized there were 15 of us, and everybody was good. But some people stuck out. There were 3 people that just stuck out. And I was like, how do you do this? How do you stick out of the sea of really good people, solid acting skills, good workers? You can obviously see it, but there was something about those people that just, there's some kind of light inside, something more interesting than what the rest of us were doing.
If you could give advice to somebody who's looking to break into acting, would you tell them go for the unconventional? Would you tell them to, try different things or experiment or just try, find what's special in you? Well, I think all of those things are right. I mean, I think in the beginning we all want to blend in. We watch television and we see ourselves sometimes and we want to be like those people that are on TV, or we do not see ourselves and we say, I want to be the first person who is there, who's not like everyone else. But I also think the advice that I would give is to, I'm not going to say learn the history of the movies, but watch other stuff, watch older stuff, watch the stuff from the 80s and 70s and 60s and 50s and 40s, because the reason everybody's the same is because we all watch the same thing. And the style is pretty much all the same. It's television. There are very few things that are mold breakers, The Sopranos or Breaking Bad. There's a reason they were a little different than everything else. And if we all watch the same shows and we act like we're on those shows, it's all boring. So if you watch things from, people did things completely differently in the 70s and people did things completely different in the 30s. I think there's something to having a kind of lexicon of film, of older television show, watching people who are really good at it, and then stealing from them.
Absolutely.
You know,
And because nobody else is watching them, I mean, you're probably one of the few people who watches, I don't know, Double Indemnity or Bringing Up Baby from the 30s or the 40s. I
tell people, especially with something like Double Indemnity, or I was talking about His Girl Friday.
Oh my God!
And
the fastest movie ever made.
And it's like if you are a woman, and if you're an actress and you want to study funny, if you want to know how to do that and get that timing down, watch that movie.
Funny and fast, because when I was watching The West Wing, I always felt like the speed at which they deliver the lines and fit in all the punchlines and all the tiny little things is very His Girl Friday, because if you slow down, that would be a completely different show.
Right. And I think it's good to have that sense of history, because I do that too as a director. I reference that stuff.
Right.
And if you don't know what I'm talking about, then you're totally lost.
I went to an audition once, and the guy was like, "Do it like Annette Bening in The American Beauty," and I had no idea. Because I didn't see the movie. I was in college or something. I did not see the movie, and I nodded, and I did whatever. And then I watched the movie. I came home, and I don't know how I got a DVD out of Blockbusters, I think. And I was like, oh, my God. I had no idea what I was doing.
In all fairness, that's a tough one. That's a tough one to do.
But it's easy because it's very easily imitable. She was so completely distinct there, and if I knew what it was, I might have gotten that job.
That's the lesson. We have to wrap up, but thank you so much for coming. But that's the lesson for today, kids. Have a lexicon, let know your history, and be able to use it and draw from it and be inspired by it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming. I hope to have you back whenever next time you get a big gig.
Absolutely.
Let me know.
Absolutely.
Thanks so much.
As always, thank you for taking a trip down the rabbit hole with us, and I'd like to thank our guest, Yelena Shmulenson. For more episodes of No Rest for the Weekend, check out our website, btrp.nyc/podcast, and check us out on social media. Let us know if there's any topics you'd like to hear covered in upcoming episodes. On behalf of Jason Godbey and myself, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time.